Welcome to a meeting of Game Pass Anonymous. My name is Dracos559, and I play Game Pass. This is a podcast where we have in-depth discussions of games currently on Microsoft's Xbox Game Pass. This week we played the 2019 game Outer Wilds by Mobius Digital. Would anyone care to share?
I'm the Law Morris, and I'm a gamer.
I am Ren Reynolds, and I play Game Pass.
And I'm Rakanai, and I have no idea why I'm here, but I also play Game Pass.
Tim's just like that guy's friend who's like doesn't really understand addiction,
I'm
and
to be supportive.
he's just in the meeting to be supportive.
But yeah, so definitely for a few reasons this week, this is going to be a tough game to cover. Especially because we have such a wide variety of opinions after playing it. This is, just spoiler alert, one of my top games of probably the decade. Meanwhile, I know Patrick had parts he really liked, parts he really hated, and Ben was so frustrated he did not finish. And Tim hasn't even played.
I mean, he's playing it now. Give the man some credit.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
We're
fair.
downloading it at least.
It's
Yes.
at 1.7%. Hopefully we'll be done by the end of the podcast.
Tim, you should stream that game. I would love to watch you get just as mad as Ben and I did.
Boy.
But yeah, so just to start things off, what did everyone here think of the setting of the game?
I thought it. I'll start out because I have probably the least amount to say because I probably saw the least. Well, besides Tim, because Tim has not even seen it.
Tim's really just
But,
here.
I know it takes place in
I
space.
thought it was beautiful. I thought it was a really, really beautiful game. And I thought it was I was like, this is actually like a really, it's a very cool idea. And and I thought that the different planets and different things like that were really awesome to look at. And I thought, it was fun to look at, definitely. And it was an interesting, I enjoyed that part of it a lot, I will say.
I definitely agree with Ben. I think the setting of this game wasn't the best part of this game, but I think that's because it was full of really high highs and then just pretty middle of the road lows, I would say. Places like Dark Bramble and Giant's Deep were incredible. Dark Bramble constantly expanding but also getting smaller was just such it was so trippy. But it was also incredibly frustrating with the anglerfish. But then Giant's Deep was awesome and terrifying all at the same time. And so those were it had these really, really cool settings, but then it also had places like Ash Twin and Ember Twin that were just they were massively important to the story, but visually they were just very humdrum.
Yeah, I'd definitely say I think that's something we can all agree on is the saying is phenomenal. It's just amazing how much variety they were able to pack into such a relatively small space. I mean, it's not a AAA game, doesn't have a ton of polish, but the entire world is explorable all at the same time with no loading screens. And yet it's so dense in detail and variety.
Yeah, and I think that something that was really cool about the game is they made the planets so small because there's always the temptation of you're going to be able to fly from one planet to another planet totally seamlessly. And I mean, No Man's Sky does that, and No Man's Sky, to their credit, they do it pretty well. But it's just planets are so big that it's not really meaningful exploration because nothing is really standing out as memorable. Whereas in this one, the planets are small enough that you can walk all the way around them fairly quickly, and I do know places on these planets.
Yeah, and the different locations on the planet actually mean something, whereas a game like No Man's Sky, like, once you've visited one location on a planet, you've basically visited them all.
Right. Especially being procedurally generated. I mean, No Man's Sky is not an apt comparison, but, like, just in the sense that it's, like, the seamless exploration of planet to planet. I think making the planets much smaller, except Dark Bramble, was a very deliberate choice, obviously, and I think it was a really good one and a really beneficial one.
Mm. Okay, so kind of going off of that, what was everyone's favorite planet?
Ben?
Corneria.
Get out of here with your Star Fox.
They're not
probably. What was the one with the black hole in it?
Brittle Hollow.
Yeah, Brittle Hollow.
That's a good choice.
Oh, I hated Brittle Hollow.
I mean, the mechanic was difficult, but it was a cool planet.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely a cool planet. It was just such a and I hated it because of how well it was made. It was just such a well constructed maze that I was constantly lost. And there were like so many points of entrance to get inside the planet that
and then the stupid black hole and like going all the way around the fucking black hole to get back to where you were. And shit.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you, Ben, that like
it's frustrating.
It was frustrating, but it was also very interesting. I agree. What's the planet you start on? Timberhearth. I really liked Timberhearth because it was just so calming and homey and like just a cozy place to be. And I think that Timberhearth is what brought out the best music in the game, which I think was the game's biggest strength. But Giant's Deep was just so cool as far as like just the whole planet being water and there just being a few islands and like the water being a part of the mystery. Was really, really I loved Giant's Deep just because it was so scary.
Yeah.
But not as scary as space.
For those who don't know, Patrick is not a fan of space.
Yeah, exactly. Like the music is incredible.
Yeah.
That is pretty beautiful.
It's available on Apple Music.
I downloaded it.
Yep.
But yes, I'm very afraid of space. Ben, can we pause that music? Thank you. I'm very afraid of space. And so there were a lot of points where Ethan was kind of helping me. And he would be like, yeah, just get out of the ship. And I'd be like, well, no, I'm like in space. And he'd be like, yeah, just get out of the ship and like float around. Like,
you have a spacesuit.
Yeah, you have a spacesuit, you have a jetpack, just fly over, fix your ship, and then get back in. And I'd be like, no, you don't understand. That is like one of my biggest fears is to just be caught adrift. Just floating away from humanity with no hope.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, there's no humanity in the game. Because you're playing as an alien.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But no, so this game definitely played on a major phobia of mine. And there were times, especially like at the very end of the game, I got my ship wedged into a spot in a very intense, like, rushing part of the game. I accidentally wedged my ship.
It was Russian?
Russian, yes. I got my ship wedged into this tight spot and I couldn't get it out. And so I was not going to go redo this. So I abandoned my ship and and it was like this giant moment of like, yep, I'm leaving the ship behind and I will never see it again. And that was really cool, but very scary. So, but I would say,
did you ever get sucked through the black hole without your ship?
Yes, a lot.
Plenty of times.
And as soon as I would just quit. I would just meditate to the next cycle because I'm not going to try and recover from that. It's too scary.
That's funny. Yeah, I'd say I kind of agree with you, Patrick. My favorite planet was Giant's Deep, especially because that was one of the first moments I really saw like just how well this game does the fact of like it makes these puzzles where the solutions like once you know them, it's like, how did I not think of that before? With the example being how you get under the current is to look for the tornado that's just spinning a different way. And it's like, oh, this whole time I've been avoiding the tornadoes because, tornado. And all I had to do to get past this puzzle was just look for the tornado spinning the correct way and fly into it.
Yeah, it definitely makes a lot of sense. And then once you're under the current, there's this very odd sense of calm.
Mm-hmm.
Who the fuck's supposed? Like, I would just wish somebody would have told me, "Hey, you're supposed to try and get into onto that planet." Like, I hated the fact that I had no idea what the fuck I was supposed to be doing.
Well, so Ben, there is a spot where the game tells you, like, look for the tornado that's spinning the opposite direction. And I'm totally with you, Ben. I like, and I mentioned this to Ethan. I think that my biggest problem with the game is it just feels like it has no respect for its players' time. Like, there's just so much shit that's so vague that it's just like, and so many times that it makes you do things over and over and over again that it's like, you don't respect my time, and I'm not down for that.
Yeah, honestly, I texted you at one point that I felt like I was playing Myst, but with more sophisticated controls.
Yeah.
But they were also incredibly frustrating controls when I was flying. Oh my god, the flight controls were... I could not handle them.
By the end of the game, I actually thought the flight controls were pretty good because I felt like they were pretty like accurate to life. Because it was all about like thrust in the correct direction no matter what. And no matter your orientation, make sure you're thrusting in the right direction. So they felt, strangely enough, because it doesn't really match the rest of the game, it felt very simmy versus like arcadey. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that complements the game well. Kind of to your point, Ben, I don't know if like the controls being simmy really complements the rest of the style of the game. But it's, I don't know. By the end, I was totally fine with them, and I had gotten used to like how to fly and how to handle it.
And I was gonna say that's an interesting point you bring up because it's definitely the flight controls is something I really appreciated coming from quite a few like simi games in space, Kerbal Space Program, Space Engineers. I was super familiar with like 6-axis thrust and like, oh, like this is what orbits look like, and so like to actually find that in this game, I was like really happily surprised. But I do think you bring up an interesting point of like the whole rest of the game is very cartoony, not physics based. Like you can stand next to a tree, regardless if there's an atmosphere or not, and get your oxygen reading.
Yeah.
So it is kind of weird to have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seemed a little silly. And then Ben, you and I had discussed that, like, we were both pretty frustrated with, like, the game doesn't really give you any push in any direction. And it doesn't really give you any feedback of, like, you're making progress.
Or, yeah. Just, like, go into space and start exploring.
Yeah, just go into space and start
dead.
reading shit.
And then you're dead. And do it again.
Yeah.
You're dead again.
And
do it again.
And one of my biggest problems with that whole thing
again.
was just that, like, I just felt like I would play for like 2 hours and I would like genuinely think, have I made any progress at all? Because I actually didn't know.
And yeah, we discussed this ourselves as well, Patrick, of this definitely probably wasn't a good game to play with a timetable in place, because definitely going into this game with a thought of like, okay, I have to beat this game by a certain time, I think definitely taints the experience, versus when I played it forever ago, it was, just a game of, okay, I have this game, I can play it whenever I want. And yeah, just in a world where like so many games have just the like, oh, here's your objective, here's the marker, get to it, and it just feels like getting a like to-do list of things to do. It was really refreshing coming into this game of like, oh, like I kind of have to like, now that I've found myself in this time loop, I have to decide what's important. Okay, I want to explore this thing. Oh, I found out like this interesting thing after going there. And that's rewarding in itself. But yeah, if the goal is, okay, how do I get to the end of the game? It's very frustrating because it doesn't point you into the way of, you're in a time loop, you have to fix this thing, you have to, here's the path you need to take to get there.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like they designed this game. So when I was a kid, my sister and I used to play A Link to the Past, and like it was such an engaging open world, and it was so fun to just be in that world and travel through that world. And Tim can definitely echo this sentiment as far as Link to the Past is concerned. That we would just walk around Hyrule for hours, not trying to like get the pendants, not trying to go through the dungeons, not trying to beat the game, just walking around Hyrule. And I think that that's what this game is kind of trying to do, is like be a very engaging world to the point that you just want to exist in this world. And then while existing and while exploring, you start to uncover the secrets of the game. And playing on a time crunch definitely didn't allow me to exist in this world in that way. Not that I think I would have been intrigued enough to do that had I not been on a time crunch, but like being on a time crunch guaranteed that like that wasn't going to happen.
Because definitely when I was playing through it, there were points where it's like, okay, I think this thing is going to play a role in getting me out of the time loop, and I would, investigate that. But there were plenty of loops where I'm just like, hey, this loop, like, I remember this interesting thing I saw, I'm gonna go investigate that and see what else I can learn about that. And then through that, you would get clues that would lead to more clues that would eventually lead towards the central plot. But if you're on a time crunch, it's like, okay, I know that, this anglerfish is blind. I don't see how that helps me.
Right.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that there were, I don't know. I think that there were a lot of failures of the game. Like, the game did not communicate a lot of things. So, Ethan, you told me, you were like, go read the ship log. And I did, and I still didn't know what was going on. And you were like, well, look at the colors. There's 4 main colors. 3 of them are main objectives. You really need 3 things to end the game. And the 4th is optional. So, and Ethan told me which color was optional. And he said, the other 3 colors, just start reading those things and going and doing those things. Like going to those locations, and just reading at those locations. And as soon as I started doing that, then the game, like, pieces started falling into place and I started making real progress in the game on my own. But the fact that the game didn't communicate that to me, the fact that Ethan had to tell me, read the ship log, these colors are objectives, and you need, like, go to the places that you're reading about in the colors. That's a major flaw in the game, I think. I think that the fact that, like, that's the game not communicating to its audience in an effective way.
See, yeah, I would say I half agree with that statement. I agree that the game, like, never does a job really of communicating there is a ship log. It's just like one of those things of like, okay, you're gonna be in your ship enough, eventually you'll probably go look at that, but still. As to the, like, okay, like, these are the objectives, this is what you need to focus on. I mean, I feel like just the color coding by itself is enough to be like, hey, these things are related. And I think this does still go back to the initial thought of, if you're playing the game to get to the end, then, yeah, the game doesn't do a good enough job explaining that. But if you're playing the game to enjoy the journey, it's like, okay, these things are related. That's interesting.
It's not about the destination. It's about the friends we made along the way.
Well, in this case,
weird science mysteries.
I mean, in this case, the destination was amazing. So, I mean, should we go into full spoiler territory now? Like,
I'm fine with that. We're about the halfway mark. Mm-hmm.
So, like,
can I just say one thing?
Yes.
This model ship is impossible to control.
It is. It's so hard. And guess what? That ship is there to train you to fly the real ship. So
don't worry. The real ship is significantly easier to fly.
Good.
It's not as jittery.
That's debatable.
Yeah. Your perspective follows the real ship better, considering you're inside it, I think, is the big help.
So full spoiler mode. Spoiler alert, if you haven't played it and you want to, stop listening now. Ben, you're about to hear the end of the game. I really don't think you care. Tim, if you're wanting to play this game, you should probably take off your headphones.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
He's hooked already.
It's interesting because the time loop is about the end of the universe, but not the end of the universe that anyone brought on. It was just the natural end of the universe.
Yeah.
And so, Ben, at the end of the game, so the time loop is 22 minutes before the sun goes supernova. And at the end of the game, and I'm sure you experienced the sun going supernova a couple of times, but at the end of the game, basically, you have discovered the coordinates to the, like, eye of the universe. You've discovered a ship that can take you there, and you have gotten a warp core to, like, fuel the ship to take you there. As soon as you take the warp core out of the place it's currently in, you just, like, you have about 10 minutes to haul ass to get to this ship.
Because the act of removing the warp core means that you won't get to go through a time loop again. Right.
The warp core is what's powering the machine that is creating the time loop. And so I was... So I took the warp core out, and this was my experience, and this pissed me off. And you would have been so mad, Ben. I took the warp core out. I am in the final minutes of the game. And it's just like music starts swelling. It's just this hyper intense, like crazy end of the game. And I was so into it. I was so excited about it. And basically you have to go to Dark Bramble, which is the place with the anglerfish, and you have to hunt down a certain distress signal. You have to shoot a probe into a seed and then track the probe, and that's where you get to the vessel, to the ship that is going to take you to where you need to go. I got into Dark Bramble, and I almost immediately got eaten by an anglerfish, and the screen said, "You are dead," and the credits rolled. And I could not fucking believe that they would do that. Like, what are you doing? Like, the audience, you just completely destroyed the best momentum you had in the entire game. Because then I had to go back to the main menu, I had to load up my adventure again, and it takes about 12 minutes to get to the point where you're pulling the warp core out. And it was just, it was extremely frustrating.
Yeah, that's frustrating. That's damn frustrating.
And I had to do it a bunch of times. It took like 5 tries.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yep.
That doesn't sound fun to me.
Yeah. You would have lost your mind.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just interesting seeing the difference in perspectives on this, because I loved that segment, even though my first time through I died as well. Because it was just like the tensest video game experience I think I've ever had in my life. Of like, okay, yes, it's a video game, but like this core mechanic in the game of like, oh, like if you die it doesn't matter because it's a time loop, you'll respawn. All of a sudden it's like, hey, guess what? In order to beat the game, we're gonna tell you full well in advance so that you know, but to beat the game, you're going to have to turn off that time loop, and you're gonna have to do this flawless in one run. And I love that it didn't like artificially lower or increase the difficulty. It's like everything's exactly the same. The only difference is you can't fuck up this time.
Well, I mean, they do that, and then they send you into the single hardest part of the game on a major time crunch. Yeah. And they don't do any checkpoints. Like Ethan and I were discussing, and it's like a 12-minute setup to start this is just too much. So, like, if they had set up a checkpoint of like, okay, you died, but you're immediately...
Yeah, then you don't have to do the fucking... Yeah, having to do the fucking training again is fucking stupid.
Yeah. So like the 12-minute setup of like getting to the planet and getting ready and getting the warp core out, that was just completely unnecessary.
Oh, well, but do you have to redo the training, like, or do you just get to get right onto the ship?
No. So you reload your game just back to
you still have the codes. And
everything. You still have everything.
Yeah. Okay. They're not completely heartless. Like, yes, it says you died and the credits roll, but if you load the save back up, it's right back to where you were.
Yeah, if they were that heartless, I would not have finished this game.
I would have had massive issues with that. And yeah, I do agree it would have been nice if they had like once you pull the warp core, like you'll restart at that checkpoint. Although I do admire the fact like they fucking stick to their guns because that I feel like that does help underscore the tension of the moment of like, yeah, you cannot fuck up, or we'll do the most reasonable thing, or the closest thing reasonably to resaying your progress, because canonically your character is dead for good now.
Yeah,
but does this guy die?
I don't know what that guy is.
Dark Bramble.
So Dark Bramble is where you end up having to go, and then and basically you get into the vessel, which is the ship, and you put the warp core in, and then you basically warp to to the eye of the universe, and then it becomes extremely surreal. And so much of it is based off of like the quantum nature of like the quantum moon. There's a lot to this game that's really interesting. I just think getting to it is just not fucking worth it.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
But
Sweet and mighty sounds like it.
But like as soon as I was to the vessel, the rest of the game was incredible. It was like, I mean, it was like almost BioShock Infinite levels of like what is happening right now. And that's extremely enjoyable. And BioShock Infinite is one of my favorite games ever because of that feeling that it left me with. But again, and Ethan, I know that I know how you feel about this game, and I totally understand how you feel about this game and why you feel that way. But like, it's just a matter of getting there. Like, they expect too much patience, I think.
I think that there are people who have... I mean, that's like the people who beat Myst. Like, it's a matter of getting there.
Yeah.
It's just like, is it worth it? To me, no. So this isn't a game for me.
Yeah.
It's definitely a game of personal preference.
For sure.
Yeah, it does not have mass appeal.
It doesn't have mass appeal, but for those that it clicks with, I can really see this being like one of the best games of all time.
Yeah.
So, Ethan, do you have anything else to add to our conversation before we give it a score?
Yeah, I don't know that I have much to add aside from like what makes it like so special to me is like not only was that ending like beautifully surreal, like you said, I think it does a great job of kind of just tying together some of the themes of mortality in the game.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
It's just crazy that this game about like, oh, it's a time loop, so death doesn't matter. Like, the whole point of the game is, like, this is what death is, and this is why it does matter. Because the entire game is like, okay, how do I escape this death that I know is coming for me at the end of the 22 minutes? Only to find out the sun's exploding just because it's the end of its natural lifespan, and the entire universe is going with it, too. There is no escape.
Right. It became much more, at the end, not to interrupt, Ethan, sorry. But like it became much more about like not a game with a goal, but like just a message of understand and accept our mortality and the inevitable facts of the universe.
Yeah. And the fact that like your mission isn't to escape that mortality, it's to be like, okay, I am mortal, what do I do with that? I make the world a better place for what comes after me. Understanding
and embracing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was just such a beautiful message that came at the end of this incredibly surreal and really amazing finale that I really wish hadn't taken 15 hours to get to.
Yeah, understandable.
Because that last 30 minutes is 10 out of 10. But
Diaz out of Diaz.
But the first 15 hours is not. So, Ben, even though you didn't finish it, give us a score.
Yeah.
Three?
Ooh, yikes.
Yeah.
Ethan, do you want to go next, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious 10 out of 10 for me.
10 out of 10 for you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the end was so good. And, like, as mad as I was at this game, I'm glad I got to experience the end. So I'll give it a 5. Because I was for the vast majority of the game, I was with Ben at, like, a 3. Like, I'm just fucking pissed at this game.
Yeah.
But that last 30 minutes gives it 2 points to get it up to a 5, because holy shit, that was good. Like, I am glad I got to experience that. I'm like, when I can play and hate 15 hours, but I'm glad I got to experience 30 minutes. That says a lot about a game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And yeah, definitely just dividing middle of the road there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say I lean a lot closer to Ben than I do to Ethan.
Yep, and
Yeah, you're 5 points away from Ethan and only 2 away from me.
Exactly. Right.
But
yeah, perfect.
I'm much more excited about this game we have coming up.
Ooh, me too.
Yep.
Me effing too.
And yeah, for anyone listening, if you're looking for a game to play and aren't afraid to play a game patiently, which should be easy with all the quarantines happening around, yeah, definitely give,
topical.
Yeah, definitely give Outer Wilds a shot if this sounds like something you'd be interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I would say that you could certainly spend some time in this game during the quarantine.
And if it clicks with you, if it's your jam, you're really going to love it. But if it's not, don't force yourself to play it.
Yeah.
But is that all we got?
I don't think so.
I think so. All right. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of Game Pass Anonymous. You can see everything we do, including our other podcast, Hard Reset, over at ColdNorthPro.com. Don't forget to leave us a rating and review, and we'll be back next week talking about A Plague Tale: Innocence.
Ooh.
Goodbye.
Also topical.
Also we're just so topical.